Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, the listener. Thanks to all of you, including Chris Allen, Chris Smith, Mark Gibson, and brand new patron Low Voltage Labs.
Woohoo!
Yay. Don't use all that power. On this episode of DTNS, The Onion bought Infowars, and no, that's not an Onion headline. Spotify wants to be the hub for all creators, and Disney adds ESPN to Disney+. This is the Daily Tech News for Thursday, November 14th, 2024. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
From Columbus, Ohio, I'm Robb Dunewood.
From deep in the heart of Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Hey, I got good news, everybody.
What's that?
Microsoft is finally offering an ISO download of the ARM release of Windows 11.
Oh,
And they said it was impossible.
It seemed like it was impossible. I mean, there's not much else to the story, but that's going to make a lot of people happy. I'm not even
I
joking.
think it will, yeah.
Now on to the rest of the quick hits. The European Commission fined Meta 797 million euros Thursday for linking Facebook Marketplace to Facebook. Other online classified services advertise on Facebook, and the EU said that linking Marketplace gave Meta an unfair advantage over competitors. Meta's terms let it use data from those advertisers to improve its own products. That's part of the issue. Meta denies that it uses the data that way and said it will appeal the decision.
Apple launched the latest version of its video editor, Final Cut 11. Magnetic Max let users identify a person or object in a video and add color grades or other effects to just them. It can also generate captions, and it can edit spatial video for the Apple Vision Pro. The iPad version gets new color tools, including the Enhanced Light and Color tool, and expands live drawing on video. And Final Cut Pro camera gets LUT previews, meaning you can monitor exposure and color while recording. Final Cut 11 is free for existing users and $299 for new users.
A separate app for Google's Gemini chatbot is now available for iOS users. You can prompt it with text, voice, or shots from your camera. Also offers Gemini Live, the voice mode that's been on Android for a few weeks now. Live can show up in the dynamic island and on your lock screen as well. And it can access other Google apps. Can't access anything else on iOS, but it can access other Google apps like YouTube and Maps.
Google launched Android System Key Verifier to help you catch if someone's messaging account has been hijacked. If and when it gets adopted by messaging apps, it manages end-to-end encryption keys. You share a QR code with a contact, and then both devices are verified. If you are suspicious that a contact has been hijacked, you can ask it to verify the keys. If they are on a different device, the keys won't verify. When you get a new device, you just scan a QR code to authenticate it. Android Faithful's Michelle Rahman has excellent breakdowns of this on AndroidAuthority.com.
Amazon launched the first of its TVs to use mini LED backlighting for improved contrast and brightness. Also supports Dolby Vision IQ, HDR10 Plus Adaptive, and Dolby Atmos. And it's optimized for gaming. Has 144 hertz refresh rate, supports AMD FreeSync Premium Pro at variable refresh rate, and has a low latency mode. The Fire TV Omni Mini LED series is priced lower than comparable models from TCL and Hisense. Also uses some AI to optimize the picture settings. If you want it to, you can turn that off if you're the type to do it yourself. But if you're like, you know what, I just want it to decide what looks better, you can have it do that. The TVs are available in 4 sizes now, starting at $819.99 for the 55-inch and topping out at $2,099.99 for the 85-inch. Disney announced that Disney Plus added 4.4 million new subscribers to pass 120 million for the streaming service. By comparison, Netflix has 287 million, so Disney still behind, but catching up. Disney Plus has a Hulu section that it put in. Some people already know this, but if you subscribe to Hulu, you don't have to open the separate Hulu app if you don't want to. You can get it in the Disney Plus app. And on December 4th, they're going to add an ESPN section. So if you're an ESPN Plus subscriber, you can get all your ESPN Plus content, again, all in one app. However, I think one of the more interesting aspects of this, if you're not an ESPN Plus subscriber, Disney's still going to make some programs and some games available to you anyway. Rob, I know that struck your eye too.
It does, because it kind of stinks if you don't have cable, or you don't have, a streaming service that has ESPN on it. There's games there you just can't watch. Well, they're saying, well, you know what? We know that a lot of people are in this situation, and we've got some stuff coming out next year in the fall, and we want to, have a big debut of that. So we're going to just give some of our content, including free games, away to people who just subscribe to Disney Plus or to Hulu or to what have you. So I thought that was actually a pretty cool thing. It made my eyebrow raise, like, oh wow, this is going to be free for some people.
It's a very unfortunate part of our modern world where we are settling the streaming frontier, and more specifically, gigantic properties like live sports are more and more coming to streaming exclusively. But that unfortunately means that you have to go to 5 or 6 different platforms to enjoy stuff. For example, if you wanted to watch live every NFL game this year, I believe that you would probably need 5 subscriptions by the time that everything wraps itself up by the end of the season. That being said, I think the story here is the fact that we are in the platform era. Hardware as platforms, software as platforms, and the services themselves are platforms for other services.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's interesting about this is you see Amazon. We were just talking earlier this week about Amazon making it folding Freevee. The free ad-supported version into Prime Video. They have Apple TV Plus as an add-on, and we were talking about how Amazon wants to be the place where you just manage everything. Disney's taking a different tactic. They're not an add-on to anything. None of their stuff is an add-on to anything. What they want is you to live in the Disney, for lack of a better word, world, and have ESPN, Hulu, everything all in one app. They're doing it slow motion, so nobody gets freaked out like you took away my app. They haven't even taken away the Hulu app. They're just getting everybody used to it, and you can just see everything in here. I think it's also smart that they're doing it now, in advance of ESPN launching its full direct-to-consumer product next fall. That's what they say, is that by next autumn, they'll sell you everything ESPN has to offer. ESPN Plus only has stuff that isn't on ESPN cable. Next fall, you'll be able to buy everything ESPN has on cable, and I would assume be able to watch it in the Disney Plus app.
That makes sense, Tom, because one of the things that Disney has to be aware of, and I'm going to call it the Disney programmatic universe, just to channel Marvel a little bit, but they want everybody in, it doesn't matter which app you use. If you're in our universe, you can get your content in the Disney app. But the other part of this is that they know that people are saying, I just don't want cable anymore. I don't want all of Hulu. I just want to watch my sports. And if I can't do just that, then I'll just cancel and I'll catch the stuff on YouTube as a replay. So Disney knows that they're betting big on the ESPN app itself that's going to give you everything. And by giving this away for free, it might just give people enough of a taste to say, hey, maybe I should go check this other thing out because I want even more sports. So that could be a suave move for Disney. The way
nobody thinks of sports when they think of Disney Plus, but they will start thinking of it.
Well, they're going to need to, because Disney has a major problem when it comes to ESPN, which is something that is valuable enough that it's been discussed as a sale target, but has not been just yet. And we don't know what Disney's going to do. They're going to allegedly have a new CEO soon, and we're going to assume that that's somebody that is going to have to make a decision. Now, of course, we have heard that Bob Iger was going to have a successor many, many times before. It turns out the only real successor that he had was the COVID-19 virus, but he was eventually back after that cleared up. Here's the problem with ESPN. ESPN used to be the most valuable thing that Disney had, and the reason why was the cable bundle, because ESPN invented and pioneered the concept of the cable bundle. When ESPN gives a direct offering to consumers, it will officially be the beginning of the end of the cable bundle. Whatever happens to the cable bundle after that, which is already eroded, and I think will further erode, you're just simply going to see a different universe. And ESPN itself might become even less valuable than it is right now. So for Disney, I think they're trying on a few different versions of this. And one of them is everything is a tile. Hulu's a tile for television and standalone movies that aren't quote unquote Disney friendly. We have Marvel, we have Star Wars, we have all these other things, and now we're going to have ESPN. Not only ESPN Plus, which right now has a limited smattering of live games, but also eventually ESPN itself, where you're just going to be able to put it on and boom, there's Stephen A. Smith screaming at you that the Cowboys are going to be done for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things ESPN Plus has done too is eat up regional sports, out of market regional sports. Like I don't have to pay for the NHL season pass. I pay for ESPN Plus. It's just in there. They used to have the CFL too. They lost that, but I think that's an interesting strategy to say, okay, sports is valuable. It's not going to stop being valuable. It's a matter of how many cents you can make on it, not that you can make money off of it. ESPN is a valuable brand. Everybody knows what it means. So Disney, I think, is smart, and I think Iger's smart to say, let's integrate this in. I don't know about you, Rob, but I'm not bullish on them selling ESPN. I'm not saying it'll never happen. Like Justin said, they're getting a new CEO. But this seems to me that they're saying, no, sports is valuable. People want sports, and we're going to make that a big element, a big tile in that app.
They won't sell. Well, won't's a strong word. I cannot see them selling before ESPN Plus comes out as its own independent app that has all of their programming on it. I think they'll at least get to that and see how that works before they make any other drastic changes like a sale. Because I don't know if there's anybody lining up to just give them billions and billions of dollars for that platform in the first place.
Yeah. Who would they sell it to that isn't a direct competitor that you are essentially betting your entire CEO-ship on you winning that trade, right? Like, because who else is going to buy it? Amazon's going to buy it. Apple's going to buy it. Netflix is going to buy it. And that's the list. We're done. We're done with possible
Name
suitors. Somebody
who doesn't have sports right now, right? Like if you sell ESPN, I guess you're not losing all sports, but you basically are. Like that's ridiculous.
And you're losing coverage though, because they are the worldwide leader for a reason. I mean, that's where you go to get coverage for the most part.
Well, and they spend the most on live.
Max has sports. Yeah.
That's the big thing for
Netflix
them.
has live NFL coming this Christmas. Like everybody's doing it.
And they have a huge thing coming up in the next 2 weeks with this Tyson versus Jake Paul fight, which is dumb, right? Objectively stupid, but at the same time, a massive live event that's going to get a huge viewership. Yeah. It's also stupid.
Rob, tell us what's going on over at Spotify.
So Spotify announced Wednesday that it is changing the name of its podcasting service from Spotify for Podcasters to Spotify for Creators. The reason for this change is because Spotify wants to reflect the changing behaviors of creators who are experimenting with different formats, namely video. Consumption habits of audiences is also shifting. More than 250 million users have watched a video podcast on Spotify, and nearly 2/3 of podcast listeners say they prefer podcasts with a video option. This is really interesting because, Tom, I think you and I were just talking about this in the last couple of days about does it make sense to put your video on Spotify? And we didn't have any pre-knowledge of this, but I think the answer was yes, because it's basically just another distribution channel. But what's interesting is that not only are they making this shift, but they're going to start paying creators for performance. So there's going to be some YouTube functionality here where, the better your video does, the more you're going to get paid. So that's a big piece of this as well. Don't know how this is going to work for Spotify. Spotify has waddle maybe is the right word when it comes to podcasting, since they've really gotten into it. But hey, like as a podcaster that creates video and it takes me an additional 5 minutes to post over there to where I may get some new people and potentially the opportunity to make some money, I'm for it till it's not working.
I love that. I love that, you have to crawl before you walk, you have to walk before you run, and then you have to waddle, presumably before you get to the bathroom.
I thought it was interesting what TechCrunch wrote, comparing this to the last time Spotify talked about their big podcast initiative. They're like, a lot of this sounded the same as their justification for the last time they got into podcasting, which it wasn't a failure, but it certainly didn't turn Spotify into the dominant voice in podcasting. Justin, how many people want this? That's the problem.
As many people as they're going to be able to build a good product for it to be displayed. There is one thing, for as much as they've spent money, and they spent a lot of dumb money, but they have spent money effectively, and they've taken over the Ringer podcast, which are hugely culturally influential. Obviously, the Joe Rogan podcast has just come out of a period where maybe it was the most culturally influential podcast in the history of the medium, considering the amount of coverage that it got throughout the later political season. But the only thing that Spotify has done effectively is sell advertising on podcasts. Like, they made their deal again with Rogan, and people were kind of surprised with the numbers. But if you're signing another deal, it essentially means that they made their money on the first one, unlike all the other speculative bets. Although salute to the exiles of the royal family for cashing them checks. They were able to make money selling ads against those Rogan episodes. And so that's why they made the deal again. Is this something that will benefit them? I don't think so. There's no lean back option for Spotify. They don't have a history in it. And until they build a best in class version for it, I'm going to be skeptical.
So here's the thing. Spotify, believe it or not, is the number 2 way that people consume podcasts on earth. YouTube is number 1. Spotify is, I wouldn't even say a distant number 2, but they're number 2. They're in front of Apple Podcasts. And the reason for that, because most people who are really into podcasts is, how can you possibly listen to a podcast on Spotify? It's just not a great experience. Well, it's the experience that people have. Spotify is so big that it basically is a default app. So literally everybody has it. Now, where I see that they may have a little better go at it when it comes to video is that they're not competing against Apple and Overcast and all the other platforms where you can go and listen to a podcast. Really, the only other game in town for watching a podcast is YouTube. And one of the things that Spotify has is a lot of people who pay Spotify to have no ads in music. And if they can bring a really nice experience to where you can now go watch a podcast, where if you're watching it on YouTube, you've got to pay YouTube an additional subscription fee to not have ads, or you got to get adept at skipping those ads really quickly, or you can go watch the same content on Spotify. And because you already have a premium account, you're just not going to have ads in that content. That could draw some people, because like, wait a minute, I can watch with no ads over here. Let me go over to Spotify, because it's not like you have to go download some app you've never heard of. Most of the people who are going to be watching podcasts on Spotify already have Spotify. So it's not a big, it's not a big to do for them if they already have an account and they can get things ad free over there.
Yeah. I think a lot of the reason Spotify and YouTube lead is because there are people who don't listen to podcasts who listen to podcasts on Spotify and YouTube, because they just are people who use Spotify and YouTube and they come across it.
Exactly.
Oh, 100%. Here's the thing that Spotify doesn't have that YouTube does have: an algorithm that surfaces a bunch of stuff because you watch a bunch of stuff. And so you discover other things. The only reason why YouTube has what it has in terms of podcast numbers is because it's actually recommending things. Discoverability is impossible in the world of podcasting.
They just need Discover Weekly for podcasts. They've got an algorithm.
What does?
Spotify, Discover Weekly for music, right? They just need that for podcasts.
But that's the problem. The problem with podcasts is that it's a much harder nut to crack, because the podcasts are a harder thing to sample. Like, when have you ever listened to 5 minutes of a show and said, oh my gosh, I really need to have that? The best way that you get new listeners and viewers for podcasts is that you usually are on some other show, or somebody really, really, really recommends a podcast to you. And so you give it a chance based on a personal recommendation. Maybe there's a world in which Spotify can say, hey, did you know, based on what you listen to on Spotify, here's what all your other friends are listening to. We've connected this social graph, and we believe that you would love this thing. Maybe. They haven't done it. We'll see whether or not they do going forward. But as far as videos go, I don't think that we can yada, yada, yada through the power of the YouTube algorithm. As frustrating as it is for creators, it still is the 800-pound gorilla in terms of surfacing new content in every form.
I mean,
There's not a
YouTube
lot
is
of
the number
places.
2 search engine.
Yeah, it is. There's not a lot of places to publish a video podcast. So Spotify's smart in being like, hey, we'll be a place where you can do that. But there's also not a lot of people who demand the video podcast. Yeah, they'll watch a podcast on YouTube, but they tend to listen to it, even if it is video. So I know for sure there are people who love a video podcast. Allison Sheridan is one of them because she's very good at letting us know if there's something up with our video feed, and she watches those very regularly. But I don't get the sense that there's a lot, and I don't get the sense that Spotify is in this to be niche. So it all goes back to what Justin was saying, is they need to be able to put it in front of people that wouldn't look for it otherwise.
You know, or just be big. And
or just be huge,
over and do it. But that is one thing as we're getting out of here on this. It's like YouTube has the recommendation engine. Spotify also benefits from the fact that they put podcasts in the same app as they have music. If Apple did that tomorrow, I suspect that they would probably be something more competitive, if not regain their spot as number
Apple
one
used to have
Spotify.
podcasts in iTunes and then broke it out.
Yeah,
Well,
right?
yeah, but then Apple Music became iTunes, and
Right.
and you know,
It's an
blah,
interesting carousel. Well, if you have feedback about this or anything we talk about on the show, you can talk to us on the social networks if you want. We are at DTNS Show on X and Mastodon. Our server there is mstdn.social. We are at Daily Tech News Show on TikTok and at DTNS Pix, DTNSPIX on Instagram and Threads. The Onion. They publish parody news, satirical news, satire. They've been doing it since 1988. The Onion has purchased the assets of Infowars from bankruptcy court. It is the kind of thing that The Onion might publish as a parody story, as I indicated at the top of the show, but this is real. The Onion said on X that it plans to relaunch Infowars in January with a, quote, relentless barrage of good humor. That sort of implies that they want to take all of the people who are coming to Infowars with anger and give them fun. The Onion itself has changed hands a few times. Univision acquired it in 2016. It was merged into Gizmodo at one point, then sold off to a private equity firm. And most recently, in April of this year, it was sold to a group led by former NBC News reporter Ben Collins and created by former Twilio CEO Jeff Lawson. Collins said in a post on Blue Sky that they want to make Infowars, quote, a very funny, very stupid website with the help of The Onion and Clickhole, quote, Hall of Famers. I think some people are offended by this. Some people are confused by this. Some people are entertained by this. And there's all kinds of other reactions as well. Rob, where do you land?
I am confused. I'm not offended by it. I understand. I think I understand what they're trying to do. But when I think Infowars, I don't think comedy. I don't think satire. I think Alex Jones. So I'm wondering how they're going to make that pivot, because there's going to be a very, very large segment of people that are not going to be able to get beyond the fact that this was an Alex Jones thing. Whether you liked Alex Jones or you didn't like Alex Jones, but both camps apply. Folks are going to have a hard time getting past that. So I want to see how it's going to work. Like I said, I'm confused. I don't know what to think about it. I want to see if they can pull it off.
Justin, I'm so glad we get a chance to talk about journalism today. What do you think?
I don't know if this is journalism. I think this is it's a confusing move. Let's get the good part out of it. There was a $1 billion bankruptcy settlement that was or decision that was levied against Alex Jones for the Sandy Hook defamation case. It seems unlikely that Alex Jones will make $1 billion doing anything before he shuffles loose this mortal coil. So selling the assets, and specifically the Infowars website, at bankruptcy court is going to generate however much money that it did. We don't know the exact figure, but it appears that money is going to go to make some version of that judgment whole for the families of the Sandy Hook victims. And so that is good that they get money from it. As to what it will be, the best case scenario is Clickhole, which was a BuzzFeed satire website and used some of the tropes of BuzzFeed, like listicles, and it also took some of the like Breitbart elements. They had like a Patriot Hole version that did stuff in a Breitbart mold. The problem is that we don't have that same level of literacy for a website like Infowars. I've been involved in politics and on the internet, and now I live in Austin. I can't count on my hand the amount of times that I have been to Infowars directly. I have no idea how they post. I certainly know clips of Alex Jones, but Alex Jones is somebody that's very, very hard to parody because he is so exuberant himself. It's hard to do an exaggerated version of a man who regularly takes his shirts off and screams so loud and so hard that he's spitting visibly and his face is all red. So I don't know. I share Robb's confusion with it, and I don't particularly have a lot of faith in Ben Collins, who was a former misinformation reporter for NBC. I was not the biggest fan of his work, and I know even less of his comedy.
I do know that The Onion is different than it used to be.
Very different.
So if you haven't looked at it lately, you might want to look at it. And given what it is now, I sort of feel like on the surface of this, it's all those people coming for Infowars content, which we consider fake news, will get actual fake news because we're The Onion and we'll give it to them. And it'll be good for them because it's fake news with a purpose. That seems to be what this is on the surface. I wrote in my newsletter today that I think it would be smart for The Onion not to just redirect all the pages of Infowars to the homepage, but to get smart about it and do some targeted stuff that's like, oh, if you're looking for this, come here. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think people who are looking for Infowars are going to be entertained by what they find at an Onion-like site, and I don't think they'll stick around. What I've settled on since this morning is The Onion's best bet with this is to make it into something, maybe it is like Clickhole, that becomes more popular and well-known amongst people than the original. And at some future point, people will be surprised to learn that there was an Infowars before this. That to me would be a better outcome for what they want to achieve, which is maybe we just wipe the original's memory from the face of the planet.
We'll see. We'll see, because like I said, if it's a gag, how long can the gag go on? It's like, oh, you came to Infowars to get some misinformation, but you really got some misinformation. That's going to be funny the first time.
Maybe once or twice. Yeah.
But is it going to be funny 18 months from now? So we'll see.
Yeah, two money elements of this. The purchasing of Infowars was announced today in the New York Times to be also in partnership with Everytown USA, which is a Michael Bloomberg-funded anti-shooting advocacy group. So they will be spending money and advertising on the brand new Infowars. And I would just wonder, even with some of Alex Jones's most hardcore customers moving away, one of the things that they mentioned was that they would still have some level of the direct-to-market supplement business that would have some element going. I'm not kidding you. I would assume that even the remnants of a direct-to-consumer business like that would probably make more money than earnestly selling web advertising for a comedy website.
It's a cash grab. That's what this. I mean, no joke. If you can do if they, in their opinion, can do some good and make some money out of it, then that makes this all make sense. Actually, that may be the best explanation.
It is very interesting and telling at this point in the Onion's history that we are talking about doing good and not, being funny, which really kind of encapsulates where the Onion has been over the last 10 years.
Well, folks, let's check out the mailbag. Bruce writes, hey, on today's show, actually a show earlier this week, there was an episode where there's a discussion about sites that do not allow you to use VPNs. I use PIA, and I found that most of the time when I try to use a site that does not allow you to use a VPN, if I switch to streaming optimized servers, they'll let me have a harder time or the sites will have a harder time detecting using the VPN. So that's interesting. But here's the thing, Bruce. You just told the internet.
So come on.
Now everybody knows.
Now everybody knows. They're going to fix it.
PIA is very well reviewed too. I know that's what Allison uses and a few other folks I know. ExpressVPN has the same kind of thing where you can pick certain servers that are a little harder for people to detect if they're using VPN. And so when I was talking about my troubles on the road, I didn't do a lot of server switching. Maybe I could have got around it that way as well. But thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, and if you'd like to talk about something we talk about on the show, you can send an email to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. So once again, thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Justin Robert Young. What are you plugging today?
Well, friends, you can find me and my friends, Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, on the panel podcast, We're Not Wrong. Once a week, we do a little tour around the news. We talk about cratering cable channels, cable news channels. Two of them may well be for sale over the next few months. And then we do a little thing about whether or not standing desks are killing you. Are you at a standing desk right now? Are you currently dying? The only way to find out is this week's We're Not Wrong.
The answer may surprise you. I actually really liked Heaton's idea for a cable network, by the way, so go listen for that
Of
as well.
course, 10 ideas that Heaton could do himself.
Yeah. Patrons, stick around for the extended show. Good Day Internet. The list of most used passwords is out, and it won't surprise you. So we're going to go digging to see if we can find a surprising reused password. Stick around for that. You can also catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Back tomorrow with a holiday video game guide with Max Scoville. Len Peralta will be here drawing things too. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.